Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Best of Book Marketing podcast. I am Paulette Stout, and Lainey Cameron is getting us live on Instagram. Well, we are so excited to be with you. This is kind of like an in-between-isode, as they say, because we just thought, finishing our first year of episodes would be really great to recap them, to go back through all the amazing topics and guests we had, and just refresh your memory on each one. If you're new to the podcast, welcome, and it will give you kind of a little bit of a roadmap for how to attack the episode so you can go back and listen.
Yay, this is exciting. And it's actually kind of fun for us too, just to look back on a whole year and realize how many interesting topics we've covered. And what y'all don't see behind the scenes is the long list of topics we didn't get to in the first year, which was only 12 episodes. And so we have so many good things still to come. And hi, everybody. Lainey. We're live on Instagram, Facebook, and now on YouTube. And I am here with the biggest cup of coffee. I'm going to hold it up next to my head. It's almost head-sized. It's a very large cup of coffee because it's only 8 a.m. in the morning for me. We did a slightly different time this time.
Yes, and thank you for being flexible with us. Thank you, everyone who's listening live, Catherine and Beth, and thank you because, our life, we always talk about life getting lifey, and we just fit this podcast around our life, and that's so much of how we do our author career choose. It just feels kind of appropriate to be frank about, like, yeah, we're going to tape at different times, and we welcome you to join us whenever that happens.
Yay. So I say, let's get going. We're going to cover each of the episodes that we've had during our 12 months, talk a little bit about what stuck out for us on those episodes. Sometimes the things that end up being a conversation are not the topic of the episode. It's one of the things I've noticed is like we get into these really interesting conversations and it's not always obvious from the episode title. So Paulette, why don't you kick us off and tell me what's going on in your writer life? You haven't chatted in like 2 weeks.
I know it's been really busy lately. Work is very busy, so I've been trying to manage all the book stuff. It was really nice to wake up to a book award. I'm not sure. I can't remember when we taped last. If I've gotten 2 on what we give away. Shameless plug over my shoulder. I'm a finalist in one, so I could still win the North Texas Reader's Choice Award. So that's really cool. I am kind of a third to a quarter of the way through rewriting my debut novel, Lovely Better. And it's kind of like reacquainting myself with an old friend. It's like so many of the sentences in my head, I almost predict what happens next, which is kind of cool that after all these years, I can still remember. But I think that my storytelling has improved and I just really want to bring a better experience to all the readers. And then that's also making me reflect on my publishing path. I know in the past I've talked about the next book that I want to write and, potentially querying that, whatever. And it's just kind of like the more I hear about what I'm starting to call corporate publishing, because corporate publishing is mostly run by multinational corporations. It's not little wizened people with spectacles, like pondering literary greatness. And like, do I want to dive in that pond? So it's funny because I was really pretty much resigned to doing the next book, and now I'm kind of questioning some of the compromises I'm gonna have to make on the creativity and the book and things that I put in my books that my readers like that may be atypical for the genre that publishers might not like. So I'm still kind of grappling with that whole publishing path thing for the next book, but it's not written, so I have time.
I'll show that I was having, I'm not going to say the name because I didn't ask for their permission, but I was having a conversation with an author yesterday who is multi-time published with large publishers, who is also multi-time indie published, self-published. And they have a book coming out that's a thriller. And this book actually, I think, would get picked up. They've got an agent. This book would get picked up if they took it down the traditional publishing path. And we had a whole conversation where they said exactly what you're saying, that they could go down that path. It would probably get picked up and they're not going to do it. They're going to indie publish this book because they want to keep the control and they don't want to wait on the timeline.
Yeah. So it's funny because I was really, I'm a person in my life who is just always seeking approval and doing, it's just my nature. I'm just always trying to get approval from people. It's like I have trauma. I won't go into it. But this has made me think of what's my motivation for seeking that path. And I did have business reasons for it, but I think there is that little piece of validation piece there, and that probably won't come. So I have to just kind of like think about it's a great path no matter what you choose, folks. So don't listen to this and think like, we're not down on corporate publishing, but it's just something that everyone has a decision everyone needs to make for themselves, and also like on a book by book basis, like what's right for that project.
Right. And a little plug that I'm skipping ahead. If you didn't listen to Camille's episode, Camille Pagan's episode, that's exactly what we talk about is pivots in publishing and when to pivot and how to know whether it's right to pivot. And she talked about how this perception that like it's a one-time decision that you decide to go with big publishing or you don't, you can't go back on that decision and change it later is so not true, right? I mean, big publishing, she talks about this, has picked up all these indie novelists recently who've done well. And so it's not at all true, you know, the way it maybe was perceived to be, whether it ever was 15 years ago, that if you go down the indie path, you can never go back and be big published. Quite the opposite. We're seeing a lot of people do both. And so, you know, there's pros and cons. We talk about them to both paths. Don't get us wrong. We're not saying we're only ever going to indie. I have one publisher I would like for my next book. In fact, I'll bridge into doing my update unless you had anything else you wanted to share. Okay. So I'm working on my second book still. It feels like it's been forever. I had 2 weeks there where I wasn't writing and I wasn't doing much other than lying on the couch, like grasping my face because I had pretty major wisdom tooth surgery. I still have a hole in my jaw, but it's much better. I will tell you, if you're going into this at 52 years old or beyond, it is not like recovering from it in your 20s. So just heads up if anyone's considering doing it. 2 weeks later, I can talk. I'm fine. I'm not on pain meds. So happy. But it was 2 weeks that I just accepted that I was not going to be doing other stuff. And I cleared it off my calendar completely. And by the end of it, I was able to watch some TV shows and read some books. I read, where is it around here? I read The Puzzle Box by Daniel Trussoni. I read the whole of that book. Fabulous thriller set in Japan. Thoroughly recommend it. But that's kind of what's going on in my life since the last one. But on my new book, I am getting into writing my blurb. I'm actually going to do my one-on-one session in July with Jessie. So I'm starting to work on it. So it's ready for us to review in July. I haven't done the exact calculation, but I think like 65% through this revision. And I hope around the same time frame of July or August, I'll be able to send it out to beta readers. So I'm feeling really confident that book will be finished this year. And then I've got one big publisher I'm interested in. And otherwise, I think I'm going to indie publish it. So I'm kind of working on how to do that because it's not how we traditionally think about it. And I want to encourage people to say, you know, the way we think about it, well, you must get an agent, then you must query, then you must go out to all the big publishers, and then you look at other paths. I'm not doing that. I'll share as I get later on how it works out, but that's not how I'm approaching it. And I only have one publisher I want for this book other than myself. So anyway, let's get into, one more thing. I did the 30-day reel challenge in April, which is posting a reel a day. So a video a day, a short video a day on Instagram for the full month. It's a challenge that's sponsored by a guy called Brock Johnson, who does kind of Instagram marketing expertise and classes and stuff. And he gives you like a prompt every day. So you're not like starting from scratch going, what do I possibly post? So each day you get a direct message saying, this is the prompt for today. You don't have to go with that prompt. Like many cases, I had something for the podcast that I wanted to do. So I'd use that and then I'd save up the prompt and use it a different day. But it just makes it easier, just like writing prompts, if you don't have to just have a blank page, right? And go like, what do I say, write, do now? I'll give you the cliff notes because I actually just went through this with our Thursday writer support group. I got and so two things changed over a month. I posted every day, and I don't necessarily post every day on my Instagram. So I posted 30 days of April every single day, including all the weekend days. I think normally I probably do 4 or 5 days, which is already plenty. Okay. And I posted pretty much only reels, with the exception of maybe a couple of images that I flashed up along the way, but mostly all real. I posted 30 reels over 30 days. Okay. So I got way more views on my Instagram, way more. My average month, I think I went back and looked, I get 8,000 to 10,000 views, and I got like almost 30,000 views on my Instagram. Yippee. Wait till you hear the end of this though. So I got more engagement. It tracked exactly with the views. So more views meant more people saw it, meant more people engaged with my content. And I got more access to people who didn't already follow me. So normally about 25% of the people who see my stuff, and remember, it's not all reels, it's a mix normally. Normally 25% of the people who see my stuff are not people who already follow me, okay? This time, it was more than half were people who don't follow me. So I was definitely getting out to non-followers. Here's the thing. 30 days of creating a video every day, I got no more new followers than a regular month if I'd posted every other day and I hadn't done all reels. And it's a hell of a lot more work. So didn't get more followers, and I didn't get more clicks. Now you could argue, but Lainey, you were posting a mix of, how to do marketing stuff. You were talking to authors. Maybe if you've been talking about your book and doing all about your book, it would have been different. Absolutely. Could be true. But isn't it interesting that even posting a reel a day, even getting way, way, way more views and interactions, I didn't gain any followers compared to normal. I'm always slowly growing. So lesson learned, I'll just share that. I've said on the podcast in the past, in the email newsletter episode, I get as much interaction from sending one author newsletter as I do from 90 days of social media posts. And this kind of still proves out that same theory. Your author newsletter or your Substack is where it's at. So saying that, let's keep going.
Let's keep going. So episode 101 was our first one. We kind of introduced ourselves, and, we talked about, building book marketing plans and, misunderstanding the role of book marketing and, the troubles with, not doing things the right, way. So that was it was funny because often first episodes are just like, hi, this is my name and whatever, but we actually kind of started talking about content, and talking about book marketing in general. So it was a nice little introduction there.
Yeah. And I think I took two things away from our first episode. I went back and kind of looked at the notes and the transcript. And as I thought about it, I was like, the first thing that I took away is that you and I had great chemistry and it was a lot of fun to do, right? That was our very first episode. And so it's like, is this going to work? Doing it with someone else is new for me, right? I've not mostly done like two of us on camera together. And we had some fun, like we had to learn how to not talk over each other, still a work in progress. We get so excited. I don't know if y'all have noticed in the audience on the video version that now we raise our hands to try and manage who talks. But like we saw, like big takeaway for me from the first episode was our chemistry was going to work and this was going to be a fun thing to do. And going back to, we've said it again and again, you have to pick which things to do in the universe and which things to do in marketing. Do the ones you enjoy. Don't do the ones that are going to make you like want to tear your hair out. And then I think the conversation we got into on setting realistic expectations over time, and it's not all about the first book. I had so many people reach out to me. I think Beth, who's watching us live here, was one of them, saying like, oh, that really helped, like take some of the pressure off. And I think I credit you totally. I definitely credit you totally for your bakery analogy, Paulette, that you used. Oh
yes, the magic bakery.
It's not originally yours, right?
It's not mine. And I was looking into it and I was trying to find out who it was. And I think in the notes, I did say that, but it was basically the concept. If you'd missed the episode, you should go back and listen. But, when you go to a bakery, there's a big bakery case. And when you have one book, you're basically have an empty bakery case except for one bakery. So you can't expect the same amount of customers and engagement as if you had a really full bakery case. There's lots to choose from. So I think it's just basically giving yourself grace to understand you're starting out, and it's, writing is a long-term endeavor, for most of us who want to make, have a consistent career out of it. And if you listen to this podcast, I wager you probably do.
Yeah. And even like advertising makes more sense when you have more books. We'll talk a little bit more. We're actually got Facebook advertising, one episode coming up. And I tell this to my class all the time. Like, I think advertising is a great way to go, especially Amazon ads. But if you've only got one book, the economics of that are going to be really tricky. And if you've only got one book and it's not a self-published book, the economics are going to suck because you're making so little per book that you're not going to be able to get, maybe you're the exception, one in a million, but in general, you're not going to be able to get your advertising costs to make any sense and to be economically, you're going to lose more than you're going to make on ads if you're only making a tiny percentage of royalties. So I think the last thing I wrote down as a quick note for that first episode is I didn't come into this expecting necessarily that I was going to talk a lot about having a chronic health condition and having Crohn's disease. And I think it came up in that very first episode in that context of that conversation of like, see it as the long road and you don't have to do everything at once. And I'm really glad I did share that from the very beginning because I feel like it actually is relevant to my author career and who I am. And it's something that I hadn't talked about a ton in the past. Like it'll pop up small ways on my social media, but I don't major on it. And so it's actually been interesting for me to make that just like to let it just be part of my story because it is part of who I am. I just wasn't putting it front and center publicly before. And so that was kind of interesting for me in that first episode that it came up, and it kind of empowered me hearing the response from other people that they were glad I shared it to be able to talk more about it in future episodes, if that makes any sense.
Yes. And thank you for sharing that, Lainey. And there are a lot of people who have chronic health conditions and, get down on themselves because, oh, I should be doing this. I should be writing. I should be doing something when your body is just telling you not today. So you just need to kind of honor that. And so I really, it means a lot that you are uncomfortable sharing that. And I think it probably helps a lot of people, especially with those expectation settings and, you can't do everything and do, kind of lean into your body and listen.
Yeah, and like I'm on a learning journey that other people are teaching me things. Like it never occurred to me because I'm like you, I'm like the A-type personality that you get a goal and you go for it. And it never occurred to me until like last year when someone was explaining to me that NaNoWriMo is ableist because it basically assumes that every single day you are up and able to write a certain number of words. Well, if you have a chronic health condition, the thing you're living with is probably not having control of every day. And so setting a goal that says I must write every single day, the same like we say all the time, button, chair, write every day. We may actually not be serving people who don't have control of their health when we say that. And I hadn't really thought about it that way. Like I've had to learn myself to just grant myself the grace when it's not a good writing, like it's not a day I'm going to be able to sit at my desk and that's just life. But I'd never really thought about all these things we say to writers, like, must write every day, which make people who can't or who shouldn't or who won't feel bad. And there is no, you must write every day. That's just someone's perception, that's someone's take.
I mean, just on a recent episode of the Creative Pen podcast, which I'm sure a lot of people listen to here, she's like, I don't write every day, and it's like, she sits down, writes in bursts. And I think that hopefully listening to this podcast, you will come away with there is no one right way. There are lots of options, and then you need to pick what's right for you.
She's fabulous. We should get her on. Yes. We should get her on. Yeah.
I don't know if we could.
Oh, sure.
I'll try.
Aim high.
Yes.
We'll come up with a good topic.
Yes. So on to episode 102. If you're ready, Lainey, we talked about how to market books after launch with Paulette Kennedy, who is fabulous, and her new book, The Woman of Black. I just bought it. Hold on, look it up. Her new book is out, and she writes paranormal women's fiction that you can't put down. And you think about it way after you finish it. So definitely go out and buy that book. The Artist of Blackberry Grange. I can't wait to read it. So Paulette was on with us, and we had two Paulettes, so that was super interesting. We had to come up with how do we know which Paulette is supposed to be speaking at the same time, which is something I don't usually encounter.
We use AI to transcribe the episode, and it does not like the name Paulette. It comes up with, I've had 100 variants of Paulette that I had to fix on the transcript.
Oh my God, that's so hilarious. So but we always talk about, book launch. But what happens after? Lainey's book's been out for a while. I have books that were out in 2021, and what do you do with them afterwards? So it was, a really great conversation about some of the tactics that you consider. And I think that one of the big things that we talked about with Paulette was the importance of community, of building community and getting out there and, networking with authors, supporting other authors, and just being there and engaging. And then, when your book comes around, then it opens up opportunities to collaborate, do newsletter swaps and, other, co-speaking on panels that, I've been invited by, people to kind of, I'm going to be selling at this bookstore. There's another table. You want to come? You just start hearing about more opportunities once you start engaging more in the author community.
Yeah. And I thought that ended up kind of being the theme of that episode was author community. I thought that was really interesting because I thought that we would end up talking a lot about tactics that you do after book launch, but actually it kind of bridged into a conversation about longevity and the importance of playing the long game and building reader community. And even I remember we talked about the post-launch slump, right? What happens after the launch, mentally, that there's definitely something that happens for many people, post-launch slump. So a good example of we ended up getting into other topics beyond it. Should we go to the third episode, which was our third?
Yes,
month?
Absolutely. Let's keep it moving. How to publish a book on a budget.
Yeah. So this one was all about how do you do it? Yeah, with less money, right? And I actually created a download for people, which was really interesting to me to do. It was actually Beth, who's watching us live here, who had asked the question of, if I want to do all of this, but I don't want to spend $1 bazillion, how do I do it? And it challenged me to go think about it. And it made me change a lot of my perspectives on things that coming from big corporate before, big corporate startups, but a lot of big corporate before, I was like, well, you must have an email at your domain name. And then I stopped back and I thought about it. What's wrong with LaineyCameronWrites@gmail.com? It's not unprofessional. Tons of people have Gmail addresses. Why do you need a domain name? Well, you need it for your author newsletter, but still, it was so if you're starting out and you're not yet published, no, you don't need to pay for domain name email. You could just use Gmail. And then if you're starting out and you're not yet published, you could just put your domain name on your Substack, and that could be your website if you wanted. So that's free. So there's a way to have, email on a website at no cost as an author. And so it was fun for me to kind of challenge some of my own preconceptions that you must do all these corporate level things of you must have a website from the beginning and you must have email and you must have all these things. I still believe you need an author newsletter or Substack, but you could do Substack for free. So that was kind of fun for me. What stuck out for you? What do you remember from that episode?
I remember things that I was trying to do was like maximizing free. So to your point, maximizing free versions, maximizing, Canva has a free version. I think BookBrush has a few free versions. There's lots of these software tools that can be really pricey when you get onto the paid version. I think there's even a free version of BookFunnel. I can't remember. Don't hold me to that. But there are beginner levels, at all these things, including newsletter, lists. If you're going to go that direction, that you can save money doing those things when you're first starting out. So maximizing free. I mean, I ended up becoming, kind of professional acquaintances with Mark Leslie Lefebvre because I heard him on the Creative Pen. He said he gave free half-hour consultations to authors. So I signed up for one. We ended up talking for an hour and I went on his podcast and now we've been he's been on our podcast. It's just maximizing free was how that all happened. So, especially if you have people that you wouldn't normally have access to, if they are giving free camp, whatever, definitely try it.
And not feeling bad about that. I remember we got into a conversation on often you feel like if someone offers something for free, you're taking advantage or, I only consume the free stuff. So and I gave myself as an example, I put a lot of free things out there because I want to help other authors. And very little of that translates into someone who is then going to do a paid engagement with me. I don't do this podcast, right? We don't, this podcast costs money. So I just feel like sometimes authors feel a little bad about taking advantage of all the free stuff out there, and you shouldn't. Do it. Take advantage of it all. If people chose to make it free, they did it for a reason, either because they want to get to know you or they get joy from helping others. That simple. Or they're building a list for the future for one day when you might be able to buy something paid from them. So don't worry about consuming all the free stuff. And the thing I remember also was, and I think you just touched on this, Paulette, if you're paying for something, use all the features instead of going and getting a second thing. So an example would be Canva. Paid Canva costs quite a lot of money, quite a lot of money. It's $100 something a year. But if you, it's all relative to where you're coming from. But if you buy the paid Canva, you can set up an author website. And then you don't have to go pay for Squarespace or Wix. You can just use Canva for it. So there you've got something else that would have cost you $200 or $300 for the year that you can now just do as part of the service you already bought. So, and you can also do social media scheduling from Canva. So you don't need to go buy a separate platform or get another platform. So use the features of the thing you are paying for rather than paying for 3 different platforms.
Yes, especially. And then choosing ones that have robust features. We're not getting paid by Canva here, but they also have, AI image generation. They've got, QR code creator, there's a lot of little things that you might want to pay, you go to get one and you have to pay for it. So if you do something like that and it has multiple features, definitely it's a great way to go. The other piece I think was trading skills. It's not something that I do a ton of, but I know that other authors do in terms of, I'm good at doing marketing graphics and that person can edit or proofread for me and you swap skills, those types of things can also save you money with that kind of barter community going back to it. So those are just some of the highlights, and there were a lot more. So definitely would encourage you to go back and listen to that episode.
The last other one I had written down just as our notes here was, when should you spend money? Right? We also talked about, you don't want to cheapskate everything. And one of the places I remember we talked about in great detail is your cover. Do not go cheap and get a shitty cover. You will regret it 100 times.
Yes, please, people. I beg you.
We're begging you.
Even if you go to 100covers.com, they have really great covers. They have good artists that work with you, pre-made with tweaks, so there are great cover designers or cover trends. There's things that you do on a cover. You think it looks really good and we can spot it in a half a second that it's a homemade cover. Then we think the book is a homemade book, and it's just kind of rough around the edges. So do yourself a favor. And if you're going to invest someplace, please invest in the cover.
And let us know if you'd like an episode on covers. That's one of the ones on our list for the future that we haven't got to yet. And we're going to put a plug in at the end, but I'll say it now. We want your feedback on which episodes you think will be most valuable. We've got a whole list, but we've got Facebook ads coming up. We know we've had requests for Amazon ads, so we're going to work out who to invite, who we think is the best expert on that. But covers is also on our list. So if there's ones that are hot topics for you, let us know.
Yes, I've been dying to have good book covers on. The thing I'm finding with a lot of the cover designers are very shy. So like every cover designer I've reached out to, it's like, yeah, I'm not comfortable coming on camera. So we're working on it, folks. We definitely will do a cover episode as soon as we can find a talented artist who's not afraid of a camera.
Love
So
it. Okay, should we go to episode 4, marketing
yes, for
by publishing
sure.
path?
Yes, this was a really fun conversation because we had authors. We had Allison Hammer on, we had Michelle Cox on, Lainey and me, and we all have like different approaches to publishing paths. So it's kind of like what are the options and considerations that are open to you when you have different publishing paths. We talk, I'm an indie, so I kind of like talk about stuff that's what I know. But it was interesting hearing, from Allison and Michelle about what are the things that happen when you're in hybrid or, traditional publishing, corporate publishing paths.
Yeah, and it was a little bit of a reality check also on, one of the things that I hate hearing is when I talk to someone about book marketing and they say, I don't need book marketing. My publisher is going to do that for me. And I just I try to take a deep breath and then I'm like, okay, there's only so much I can do to convince someone here. But it drives me crazy because it's like, oh, you're just going to be so disappointed. You can't just delegate everything to your publisher. And I think Allison did a brilliant job of talking about what her publisher did and did not do for her. And she's been
Yes.
with, two big publishing houses, 2 of the biggest publishing houses. And so, yeah, I think the other thing I liked about that episode is it got us off this concept that I see authors do, which is I found a checklist on the internet and it says I should do these 100 things to market my book. And the reality is you do 100 things, it's going to drive you completely crazy. And was that checklist even written for your publishing model, or was it written by a big publisher offering you're an indie, or was it written by an indie and you're a big publisher book and you're going to waste your time doing things that aren't relevant? So I think if you're trying to work out what should I do for my model, or even should I indie publish, that's a really good episode that's going to give you a sense of the difference of what you get with a big publisher versus doing it yourself, for example, or with a small publisher.
Yes, for sure. That was a good thing. And and then it's also kind of reinforces, I think, some of the strengths and the weaknesses of the different publishing paths so you can make an informed decision. So that's definitely a good episode. Anything else you want to cover there before we go on to episode 105, Book Awards?
I think it was interesting that certain themes have come up through all of our episodes. And one of them has been, you don't have to do it all. There's been a few, but one of them has been this idea that careers go back and forth across publishing models. And both Allison and especially Michelle was talking about this, that she's been in multiple different publishing models. And then it came up again in great detail in Camille's episode that we're going to talk about in a few minutes. And so I think this idea of it's not a one and done choice. The authors go back and forth from big publisher to indie and back to mid-sized publisher, right? That was a really interesting theme that keeps coming up again and again from the authors we talked to.
Right. And then since the episode aired, Allison and her co-writing partner under Ali Brady, they ended up indie publishing a story. So, that's another dipping the toe in what's it like type of thing. Who knows what will follow for that writing duo. But it's just an example of, we have choices as authors. So for sure. So episode 105 was on book awards, all things book awards. And Lainey and I, y'all, we got a lot. So we know what we're talking about with book awards. But I think more importantly, we discussed the strategic purpose of book awards in your marketing, portfolio. So I think that was something that I think some people go into book awards for different reasons, but I think both of us look at it as a tool for marketing.
Yeah, and if I got one thing across in that episode, I hope it's that you shouldn't believe some of these big claims from these awards that say that they have all this awareness value and it goes out in a newsletter to this many people and that many people will hear about it. With very few exceptions, the value of a book award is that you can use it in your marketing. It provides social proof, someone else saying your work is of quality. But all of these awards that claim that, they've got huge awareness value in my experience, none of them have awareness value with the exception of the Women's Prize for Fiction in the UK, the Booker and the Pulitzer.
Right.
And maybe the Edgar, actually, if you're in the thriller space. But yeah, most of these do not have awareness value. Don't believe when they tell you they do.
Right. But just despite that, I think they still have value. I think that they can help you not only in, having marketing content for your social and for your community and your newsletter. I think it can also help, give you some gravitas if you're trying to apply to programs or podcasts or, other places where you have to kind of validate that you're a noteworthy person that should be listened to, or they should be, invited on that radio show or that TV show or the podcast, or should invite you to do a guest article in their magazine.
Yeah, I mean, I talk to my class, and I've talked frequently here about the idea that you do want to invest in social proof, is what I call it. Social proof is someone else talking about your work, right? So it could be reviews, it could be awards, it could be author endorsements. There's different ways to get it, but you want to invest first in social proof before you put any money on awareness. So, book awards are a great form of social proof, and they're not as hard to win as you think they are. I think some people think they're so going to be impossible to win and we should just not even try. And I would encourage you not to take that stance.
Yeah, I mean, if your book is quality and there's a category for your book in that award, I would encourage you to apply in the category that best applies. So, for instance, my book kind of straddles women's fiction and romance, and I've won in both categories. It depends on the award, but if the award doesn't really have a category for like contemporary fiction, contemporary women's fiction, and you're going up against all the people who are writing, literary or whatever, like I just feel like my chances are less. If they're attracting that audience, those judges are probably going to be inclined in that direction, not going to be more commercial. So, those awards aren't ones that I typically apply for. Although I did apply for the Pulitzer, so I'm just waiting for my award to come.
Yeah,
like,
no, I agree.
Right?
Like narrow categories are better. And the other thing, when you go into a big broad category, so let's say contemporary fiction, is you don't know what the judges are using to decide what makes for the best contemporary fiction. So you're kind of like just you're buying a raffle ticket in that scenario, because you don't know, like, do they want a fast-paced novel? Do they want literary with lots of flowy analogies? Like, you have no clue. So you're much better choosing a much narrower category, within women's fiction, within romantic women's fiction, within, romantic women's fiction dealing with social issues. Like, the more narrow you can get, the better, because then your book is truly being compared to other similar books, not to completely different books.
Right. So if you have memoir, you'll be on even keel versus someone that you're in a contemporary fiction category, right, with a memoir, or nonfiction, or, what have you.
Yeah.
So we are in our sponsor segment.
Oh, no. No, we have one more. Episode 6.
Sorry. I skipped it. Sorry.
Episode 6 was all around, back on this topic that kept coming up again, how to build a sustainable career. And this was with one of my favorite people, Tiffany Yates Martin. She has a phenomenal blog. If you don't follow her blog, so inspirational. She writes a lot about editing and writing, but she also writes a lot about the motivational piece of how do you stay motivated. Like, she's got some great articles on how to stay motivated during troubling times when you're getting distracted all over by everything happening in the news. Slightly relevant right now to some of us. But Tiffany went through, it was so good, kind of like mindset hacks you'll want to use. She talked a lot about the content of her new book called The Intuitive Author, which I thoroughly recommend. And I liked that she takes such kind of a practical approach, not just to the how do you write what you intended to write and get it on the page, but also how do you sustain your career and stay motivated and stay resilient over time in the face of the reality of a roller coaster and rejection that is just part of writer life. So I don't know if there's anything that stuck out to you in that one, Paulette.
I think it was more about, it's like, it's okay to be not okay. It's okay to kind of just embrace who you are and go on your own path and, stay centered on what you need. I definitely recommend the book, The Intuitive Author. It kind of left me thinking, gave me a lot to think about. So definitely recommend giving that a listen and giving the book a listen.
Yeah. And I liked the focus on goals as well, or rather, and Camille went to the same place with her episode, like really thinking about what you want out of this, right? And measuring your progress against that, not against other people and what they want. And like what you're in this for is different to what someone else is in it for. And it's so easy to get caught up in this like writer jealousy thing, which we get into a lot in Camille's episode. Sponsor segment. So we've had 2 sponsors so far. And first, I just want to say a huge thank you to both of our sponsors to date. Why do we have sponsors? Well, we have costs associated with this podcast. We have a website that goes with the podcast that has a cost to it. We have an email newsletter that comes out. If you're not on it, you should definitely join it. And that has a cost associated with it. We have a domain name, and that has a cost associated with it. So I spend somewhere between, I want to say $300 to $500 a year just on those things. And so the sponsors help defray that for us. It doesn't cover all of it, but it helps defray some of that cost for us. So I do want to say a huge thank you to our two sponsors. We've said this many times. We will not bring anyone on as a sponsor that we are not 100% convinced is a great partner, is legitimate, is someone you can trust, offers a service that you are going to enjoy and appreciate and feel like it was valuable. So we do encourage sponsors. We would love some new sponsors. We've not been very good at actually going out and inviting people. We can just kind of happens. But if you might be interested in being a sponsor for the podcast in our second year here, for some of our second year for a few months, let us know. And let me just say a couple of words about our two sponsors who are fabulous. Our first was Lillian Sue. And Lillian Sue is a publicist, but she offers a lot of really interesting things. She has, and I say that because I know I and Paulette, we're not big fans of the dump $15,000, cross your fingers and trust us method of publicity, which very often results in, gosh, why did I trust you? And so, and even good publicists, they can't guarantee results, and they'll tell you that, right? They'll be honest.
Yes.
Anyone
Good ones will tell you. Yes.
Yeah. If they say they're guaranteeing results, I'd probably walk away because they're suspicious, because they can't. Okay. So even great publicists cannot guarantee your results. They don't have control. So I like what Lillian does, because the first thing she has is she has a book. It's called The Powerful Publicity Prescription. And it basically teaches you how to do your own PR. So you don't have to hire a publicist. Here's what you need to know in order to do your own PR. So great. Start there. Great book. Thoroughly recommended. The other thing she does is she does coaching by the hour or in small packages, where she'll help you with a piece of your publicity plan. So if you want to work out how to research the right people and build your list, or you want to work out how to hone your story, she's doing some workshops and some consults right now around honing your story, how to use your personal life story as the hook for media, which is kind of interesting. So those are things that, like, instead of give me 15 grand and cross your fingers, she's like, no, let me help you where you need help, and let's keep it more affordable. And so that's one of the reasons I felt very confident bringing her in as a sponsor. I've worked with her. She teaches some pieces of my class for me as well in the publicity space. So fabulous, fabulous. Recommend to go check her out. Lillian Sue, you can find her, and we'll put the links in the episode page. And then the other person we've had is Alida Winterheimer, has been another fabulous sponsor for us on the craft side. So Alida's not on the marketing side, she's on the craft side, and she offers MFA level courses. She offers workshops, really kind of advanced marketing craft work, where you can, and she is a three-time Pushcart Prize nominee. She has been a notable in Best American Essays, Page Turner Award winner. I mean, this is someone who knows what she's talking about when she talks about the craft of writing. And she just brings so much great energy. She has her own podcast called the Storyworks Podcast, which I encourage you to check out. It's fabulous. Storyworks Roundtable, just fabulous. And she offers a series of writing workshops and craft workshops that are really kind of at that advanced level for authors who are looking to expand and deepen their skills, not at the beginner level of, like, you know, how do I write a novel? And there's a lot of beginner level stuff out there, but I find it's actually hard to pick the right advanced stuff. And so definitely Alida Winterheimer, I would recommend to go check her out. So there you go. There's an extra little blurb.
Yeah, a little blurb. And then a little, just another, for Alida's podcast, the Storyworks Roundtable. It's just really, she just has this easy breezy way of interviewing people that makes the content really appealing. So if you're looking for a really good craft listen, her and Mary Catherine, her co-host, they have a really nice podcast over there. So check that out. All righty. Episode 107, y'all. Author newsletters. So we go over kind of like the nuts and bolts of author newsletters from all different angles, from like, what do you have them? Should you have them? Should you not? What do you put in them? What platforms do you choose? You know, how do you build a list? Like all the things. And, you know, Lainey has made it super clear. I think I made it super clear that we think that newsletters are an important place to have. They are the one place where you have control over your audience. No one can take that away from you. The algorithms can change on, you know, social or Amazon or whatever, but like, these are your peeps, you have them, and you can kind of curate the audience that you want. So I think that this is a really great episode for you to go back and listen to the entire thing, because there's so much practical hands-on tips there, from choosing an affordable e-list server. Mine's a little expensive, but there's some features I want and I'm not willing to compromise on those. So like I have to go on the higher tier, but there's lots of, more affordable ways to do this. And there's lots of different platforms, from Substack, like Lainey said before, to, MailerLite, to MailChimp, and, we just feel like it's a really important tool in your box of marketing platform.
And this episode, I think, was the most practical of all our episodes to date. We really do get into like statistics and how to know if your newsletter is working and what platform should you use and what are your options and how often should you send it. Really, really practical. I've had a lot of great feedback on that. And I know several author friends have told me that they keep sending people to that particular episode as kind of like, you don't know what to do with your newsletter? Go listen to this one.
Go.
I love when people tell me that they're referring people to our podcast as a key source of like how to learn about something.
Yeah, I think this one and the awards episodes are just two things that people struggle with. Like, do I do book awards? Do I do a newsletter? What do I do with it? And I think those two episodes for sure, and especially the author newsletter episode, was basically you can write it down and use it. So definitely a good use of your time in the author newsletter space.
And then the next one after that was, I'm going to say, our funniest episode to date. Yes. So this is the one with Mark Leslie Lefevre, and oh my goodness, he had us. Lefebvre, sorry. French way. French versus Canadian. Lefebvre.
He says Lefebvre, so I say Lefebvre.
Lefebvre. Well, we should honor people's pronunciation. So Mark Leslie just had us like cracking up. There were moments where Paulette and I, like, actually editing the audio of this, I had to cut out little pieces of the laughter because it went on for like 30 seconds where we couldn't stop laughing.
He's just an amazing man. He's so giving. He is so supportive of authors. He is out there. If you're not familiar with him, please go look up his, books for authors, especially how to work with bookstores and libraries, which was the topic of this episode. And, he's worked on the publishing side. He's worked at publishing houses. He's worked at, Kobo, and now, he's at Draft to Digital now. So he is in the buyer kind of space on the publishing side. So there's great insights for what are the concerns, what are they looking for, and how can we as authors better navigate that space. I ended up having some good conversation with my local bookseller in terms of, should I be buying my bulk books from you when I go tabling, when I go out to events and things. So, we had a good thing. It didn't end up working out for me because the cost was just a little prohibitive with what I could get myself versus what they were charging me for the books. But, if that's something that's a concern for you, and if you want your books showing up on BookScan, those are the types of relationships with your local booksellers that, could be beneficial for you.
Yeah, I just thought that, again, was so practical. His book is fabulous. And he really went into a lot of the ideas on like, how do you, even as an indie, even as a small publisher author, where you're not taking returns, where you're not giving that massive discount that big publisher books are, how do you build relationships with bookstores and libraries and make your book available? And he had some really innovative ideas that I had never heard before around how to do that, like what you were just saying. So yeah, if you're not an expert on bookstores and libraries, which I certainly wasn't, and I think most of our listeners aren't, this one is definitely worth your time to go listen to.
Yes, for sure. Episode 109, goal setting. Lainey?
Okay, so this was our January episode. And in addition to talking about how life is lifey, which we're still going to make t-shirts, it's coming, or merch, we talked about how we set goals, and it was really interesting to me how differently Paulette and I approach it, right? We're different people with different goals, with different life, everything. And so I thought it was very interesting for us to have a conversation about the different ways of setting goals. And one of the things that I talked about is that we're going to move the podcast newsletter to Substack. Has anyone noticed that we haven't done it yet? I believe that, and hashtag life is lifey, between my mom being in the hospital and wisdom tooth surgery, that one was one of I'm ditching it off the site. It's not brain surgery and nobody dies if it happens in May instead of February. And so the cool thing is I am actually fairly far down that path. And I think that this episode will be the first one that we actually put up on our Substack and promote on our new Substack. So watch this space coming soon. Anything else on that goal setting one? It was a fun conversation.
This one thing, because just to speak to what you were saying, I am, a little bit unreasonable in my goal setting. Like I come in with this huge list of like 8 things, and then each thing has sub bullets, like 1, 2, 3, and some have like Roman numerals, or, it's like a lot. And, Lainey came in with like 2 or 3, and I think she added one during the call. So it's like, there's no one right way to do goal setting. So I just wanted to reinforce that point again. And just to Beth's comment, yes, she wants Life Gets Lifey on a mug. I'm thinking mugs and t-shirts. So I was laying in bed this morning.
Yeah.
I was laying in bed this morning thinking of design. So I think I'm actually I'm gonna put that as a goal. We're talking about goals.
I wrote down as I saw Beth's comment, Life Gets Lifey on one side of the mug and on the other side, and it's okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So the next episode, our 10th episode, we're getting down to the finish line here, 12 so far other than this one. Our 10th episode was the one we've referenced a couple of times about navigating author career change and career pivots with Camille Pagan. And I loved this episode. She had so many good things. We got into a whole conversation about jealousy and writer jealousy, which was not the direction I expected that episode to go, but it was so valuable to me. And then the other thing Camille talked about a lot was how our brains get in the way of what we actually want as a defense mechanism to prevent us from being disappointed. We're so afraid of being disappointed, even not knowing it subconsciously, that we don't dare say the thing we actually want or go after it. And we minimize our goals and minimize our dreams. And so that really encouraged me, that episode, to kind of step out of that and say, no, what do I really want? And how do I go after that and not minimize it and kind of shrink it down, shrink my goals down to what I think might be the reality of what's possible. Because her point is, if you do that, then you're never going to get the big dream. And I think she's right about that. So I don't know. What did you think of that episode?
Yeah, the thing is, the jealousy thing really struck a chord for me, because it's something that, frankly, I struggle with a lot. I'm just a very competitive person, and it's no matter what I do, it's never enough, so that's something I struggle with. And I thought it was so profound when she was saying how the jealousy was actually good. And I was like, wait, what? And she was like, basically, it's showing you a path towards what you want. Like, it's showing you, if that's something that is, if you're seeing something that someone else has, or a situation, and that you want that for yourself, that's a goal. You've just created a goal for yourself to work towards that. And that was just such a positive reframing of something that I view as really a negative, like, character or flaw in myself.
Yeah, like, jealousy is telling you what maybe you actually want. And maybe you've been minimizing that thing and not allowing yourself to dream it. And maybe that jealousy is a little poke that says, hey, Paulette, maybe that is for you after all.
Yes, exactly.
11, episode 11, book blurbs.
Oh. Can I tell
Paulette
you,
is on camera
secret?
making an I love Jessie so much.
I like my session with Jessie is Wednesday. I'm like so excited. Like, I was like in the middle of the episode, y'all. Like, I was like signing up with Jessie in the middle of the episode, because she is just so impressive. She's completely, she gave a lot of information away for free, frankly, like in this episode. So definitely go listen to it too if you are struggling with book blurbs. What to put in, how to handle trigger warnings, how long it should be, how to handle which characters you focus on, and what plot tropes she really was very gracious with the amount of information she shared, given that she has like a paid service for this, when I still went out and signed up. So
me too. We're both signed up now, and I knew
can't
Jessie.
Say enough.
We're talking
about
Jessie Kniff. So for those who are not familiar, Jessie Kniff, her company is Book Blurb Magic, and she has a course where you can learn to write your book blurb, and she also has one-on-one consult, so she'll write it for you. She's got different ways. We're both doing the one-on-one consult, where you write your blurb and then you take it to her, and she helps you get it to go from good to brilliant. And so, yeah, she gives so much information away. She shared her whole framework for kind of paragraph 1, paragraph 2, paragraph 3. Brilliant. I actually went and took her class, her online class. It's not that much after that. And now I'm also going to go do the one-on-one consult. So I'm consuming it all.
Yeah, I'm going to see, like, after I was kind of like, well, if we finish quick, can I do another one? She's like, no, which is another lesson for us as business people. Like, honor your time, have your boundaries, and don't give yourself away for free. I think sometimes with me, especially, I'm like seeking approval, and I'm doing stuff for free, and I'm, jumping into chats and author forums. I'm like, oh, I guess I could be charging for that, So, honoring your time is I have a lot of respect for that.
And then our 12th episode, last one of the first year. This is number 13, and now we're moving on to season 2, episode year 2. was all around how to market controversial books. And this was a fun conversation. We had Laura Drake, who writes both romance and women's fiction. We had Sharon Duquette, who has had a memoir and now following that with a thriller. We have Paulette, who's written a whole series of books that are fabulous, that hit on controversial issues, novels, and romantic. And it was such a good conversation. And I hadn't even thought about the fact that my first book was also controversial. And
yes,
so
it was, girl.
Such a cool conversation about like, do you do trigger warnings or not? I think you'll be surprised if you haven't listened to that episode to hear that several of the authors on this, actually, I think 3 out of 4 of us said, no, you don't need to do a trigger warning if you do everything else right, which is interesting. And we talked about kind of what's worked for them, for you, Paulette, and anything else that stuck out in that last episode for you?
I think it's also just for me also about dealing with, getting ready to market a book like that, getting comfortable talking about something that's a controversial topic. You have to feel comfortable about it yourself. And it can be sometimes difficult to imagine yourself putting it out in the world and people reading it and having opinions and wanting to talk about it. But if you're doing it, you need to put yourself in that space. You need to be able to confidently talk about your story. And I remember with my first book, it was, it was peeking in the bedroom. It was very biographical and it was just, hard to talk about it at the beginning. But like the more you talk about it, the easier it comes. And you should have your elevator pitch, no matter what you write about, even if it's a controversial thing. What are you going to do about it? And then also just setting some realistic expectations around, sales and audience. And it may just take you a little bit longer to find your people if you're kind of, pushing the edges a bit, because, not everyone likes that, but doesn't mean that there aren't readers out there for you.
And completely agree. And I just thought there was so many interesting insights also on like, write the book of your heart and don't let like commercial viability, like Laura made some brilliant points on this, that some of the books she's written were not about writing a bestseller or selling thousands of copies. They were about a book that she wanted to see in the world, and she wrote it and put it out there. And yeah, sure, it'd be nice if it became a bestseller, but if that wasn't your goal with the book, don't write the book from your, first off, don't step away from writing the book of your heart, but also don't write the book of your heart and then like beat the poor book up because it turns out not to be a commercial bestseller, because that wasn't why you wrote it. And so like, I thought that was a really interesting conversation, because not everything is about numbers and money, right? At the end of the day, sometimes we're doing this because it's our passion and we want to put something in the world and it's going to live beyond ourselves. And yeah,
it's funny because like so many of us, when we were writing our first books, we're like, if I could just finish this book and put it out into the world and one person reads it, I'll be so happy. And then you get that, and then you're like shifting the goalposts, like
right, exactly.
And
author jealousy. I saw someone else.
Yes, exactly. Right. Little green-eyed monster. So just remember that when you're writing, especially with these, my books are, I've found success, but it is not the same success as maybe I would have had if I had chosen something way less controversial. I'm just gonna be frank.
And so we made it to the end. That was our 12th episode. And the thing we wanted to wrap up with is actually 2 things. One is, if you like the podcast, the biggest favor you can do for us is go write a review. And this is like a book review in that we don't need you to write an essay. Just go to either Apple Podcasts or Spotify or YouTube. If you don't follow us on YouTube, follow us on YouTube. Go to Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Just give us some stars. If you want to write one line that says it's useful to you, perfect. Don't need an essay, but that helps us a ton, because just like with book reviews, when you have more book reviews on Amazon, they're more likely to promote your book. Same thing on the podcast platforms. More reviews mean more people see the podcast, mean we help more authors. So that would be my first please, if you enjoy it and it's been valuable to us, it will take you less than 5 minutes to go to wherever you're watching us, either subscribe on YouTube, write a quick one-liner on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And then the second thing I want to say is we love topics. We love requests. Many of the topics we've chosen are based on requests. I see on Instagram that Salima, who is absolutely fabulous, I love her to death. I might recommend her for the future. She writes thrillers. Salima actually is saying yes to a cover episode. She's like, yes, cover episode all the way. Let's do it. So there's one feedback that it's on the list.
All right. I'll get on that, Selena.
But yeah, tell us what you want to hear. Like I said, we've got Facebook ads coming up. We are trying to work out the right person for Amazon ads.
I know. I've got a request out. Fingers crossed, folks.
Yay.
So we'll
So
see how
are there
that
any other
goes.
topics we've been thinking about, Paulette, that you want to throw into the universe for anyone?
People don't hate me. I think we're going to have an up and coming episode on AI and how you can use it as an author while staying true to your values. I really feel like it's a tool for us. And I hope you'll give the episode a chance, because I think that there's a lot of really good things that you can tap into to kind of begin using AI in your process and in your marketing. So it's not anything to be afraid of. I know it's a very passionate topic. And I'm up to my eyeballs in AI every day at work. And it's just something that's on my mind a lot. So, Lainey and I will kind of scope out that episode, but we'll probably be doing one on, working AI into your process.
Like ethical AI, because authors get so caught up over the unethical side of AI. But let's talk about the ethical side, and where you can use it with confidence and feel okay. And we use a lot of AI with the podcast. The transcript for this podcast is created using AI. Believe me, I don't sit there and write it out. The videos for this podcast, we have lots of things we use AI for, but we're starting with our own intellectual property. And I think there's a huge difference between stealing someone's writing or using a platform that stole someone's writing and ethically using AI. So I think that's a brilliant, brilliant topic. And I'm just going to say, if you have ideas for us, there are 2 ways that you can get us ideas. I will take this one on because Paulette has a full-time job. You can message me on any of the platforms. So whether that's the podcast, social media, on Instagram, on TikTok, we have a TikTok, on Facebook, you can email me, you can email the podcast, you can put a comment on any of our episode pages. So feel free to reach out to me directly. This is Lainey Cameron talking. There is also a form on the episode page on the website and in the episode description for this episode, where you can just go to the forum and say, I want to hear such and such. So lots of easy ways. Send me a DM, send me an email, put it in the forum, whatever works for you.
And I'm on social way too much, so you can email me too. Whatever you're more comfortable with, just let us know what you want, and we'll do our best to serve you, because we really view this show as like a service to the author community. Like Lainey said, we're not getting rich off this, y'all. This is not a this is a buddy losing endeavor, but it brings us both such joy, and we hope that you find value in it too. And we'll come back and watch our next episode on Facebook advertising,
which will be this month in May. So we got 2 episodes in May, this one and another one coming on Facebook ads.
So we will see you next time. Thank you everyone for watching.